Good morning, everybody. Welcome into Dodger Heads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined this morning by Matthew Moreno, here to talk some Dodgers young pitching, Matt. As we record this, we still don't know who's starting tonight. There were rumors it was going to be Justin Wrobleski, and then Bobby Miller scratched from his start. Some weird language around how these two guys might both get called up or one might get called up. What do you make of, as we record this now, kind of how the Dodgers might handle tonight's game?
Yeah, we got a curveball Thursday afternoon, and I guess pardon the pun there, if you will. Yeah, all as you said, kind of all week. Once it became clear that the Dodgers were thinking about pushing Tyler Glasnow back to Saturday to give him extra rest, Justin Wrobleski immediately emerged as the most likely option to come up, just because his schedule lined up with being able to pitch Friday, and so that's how things were looking. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, Bobby Miller was scratched. The report from Fabian Ardaya is that, fortunately, it's not an injury for Bobby Miller, so that's great news. But that he didn't start for Oklahoma City because the Dodgers might need him for like coverage this weekend. And to me, I took that like, is that a bullpen role then, or is he going to be starting Friday and Wrobleski's coming out of the bullpen? I know we'll get into some of this. So it's just a weird kind of scenario. Is it just in case of emergency, they wanted to be able to have Bobby Miller available, and he's not necessarily like really factoring into the plans? It's just a strange situation. I know, we're going to put this up. This will be live, and then a handful of hours from now, we'll have our answered. So we'll be able to come back and read everybody's comments and see what they thought the Dodgers should have done.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the Dodgers are also dealing with a 26-man roster crunch. And so when it comes to who starts Friday, you've got to figure out a roster move. Michael Grove is kind of one of the guys who could be optioned, although they seem to trust him. You've got Brent Honeywell, who seems the most likely to be DFA'd if they go that route. But you reminded me, Ryan Brazier's also due back at some point this weekend, and he's going to need a spot on the roster, including a 40-man roster spot, in addition to the roster spots that'll need to be open for Max Muncy and Tommy Edman, who Edman hit a home run last night, by the way, in his rehab appearance. And so some interesting maneuvering, because part of me was like, maybe they're going, Wrobleski and Miller as kind of a piggyback in the way that we saw Stone and Knack. But I don't know where they find two roster spots, as they're going to try and scrape to find one. But as we have this conversation, I want to kind of shift, Matt, to just sort of these young pitchers in general and get a sense from you of where do these guys stand? Like we keep mentioning Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone, Landon Knack, Justin Wrobleski, and I'm curious kind of who you trust the most. And so what I did is I put together all these guys' performances on the season and threw them in a nice little helpful chart. And I said, choose your pitcher here, Matt. You've got 5 choices, okay? And I'm not going to tell you who is who, but you can see, and I'll read these off for those that might just be listening. You've got player A has a 3.63 ERA, a 4.06 expected ERA. That's based on batted ball data, that kind of a thing. 7 strikeouts per 9, almost 2.5 walks per 9. Player B, 3 ERA, 3.5 expected ERA, 8.25 strikeouts per 9, 2.25 walks per 9. Player C, 4.05 ERA, 5.08 expected ERA, 6.79 strikeouts, 3.15 walks. Player D, 4.5 ERA, 3.8 expected ERA. So highest ERA, but one of the better expected ERAs, 8.5 strikeouts, 2.9 walks. And then player E, 3.5 ERA, 3.8 expected, 8.5 strikeouts per 9, 2.5 walks per 9. So kind of the best strikeout to walk ratio down there at a bottom. So there's a curveball that I've thrown in here, Matt, but I'm curious as you look at these 5 players. I know expected ERA is probably a number you just ignore. That feels like a nerd stat to you. So tell me as you look at these guys, and obviously some have pitched more innings than others. Give me just kind of your immediate reactions of these 5. If the Dodgers needed a starter, who do you feel like you would trust the most picking out of the grab bag?
Well, this is going against my eye test 100% just because it's strictly stats. But I'll do player B. Come on down.
Okay.
You're starting game whatever of the NLDS for us.
Do you have a guess on who player B is?
I kind of feel like it's going to be somebody unexpected. And these are all young pitchers. Is that correct?
So I'll tell you who the people are. So this
Okay.
is the list here includes, I put Clayton Kershaw on this list.
Okay.
I put Bobby Miller on this list, but I cheated a little bit and I included last year's numbers in with the small sample size we've seen from him. And then it is Stone, Knack, and Wrobleski are the other 3 guys. So it's Stone, Knack, Wrobleski, Bobby Miller, Clayton Kershaw in some order. So you're going player B. Do you have a guess on who player B is?
I think it might be Wrobleski.
Good guess, but no. It's
Okay.
actually Landon Knack.
That was
So
my
Gavin
second
Stone,
guess.
player A, Landon Knack, player B, Justin Wrobleski, player C, Bobby Miller, again, 23-24 combined, player D, and then Clayton Kershaw sitting down there with the healthiest strikeout per 9 to walk per 9 ratio. But to me, that like, give me your reaction now that you see who these guys are. Did you expect Landon Knack to kind of have the best sort of looking box score line without having names and sort of eye tests attached to it?
It's not all that surprising. I was torn between Knack and Wrobleski. I thought maybe Knack was going to be if he wasn't player B, then he was player E. Uh, to see that he has the 3.0 ERA, the 3.53 expected, which by the way, if I need to learn expected ERA instead of FIP now, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Similar things, but I like expected ERA better.
Got it. It's not necessarily all that surprising because I feel like, he has quietly been pretty consistent for them. It's not like it hasn't been flashy necessarily per se, but it's been reliable. It's been, 5 innings of
Yeah.
1 run allowed, maybe 2 runs allowed. Sometimes I don't know if he has a scoreless outing, but he's gotten through at least maybe 3 or 4 scoreless innings. Then he'll give up a run or two. So it's honestly not all that surprising to see him sort of sticking out in that sense.
I think the biggest surprise to me, Matt, is the amount of times we had this conversation on Wednesday when we did our live show. Who do you trust the most? And there were a lot of votes for Wrobleski. There's really not a single number that you could point to justify that. Like, he has the worst ERA, he has the worst expected ERA, he has the worst strikeout per 9, and he has the worst walks per 9. Obviously, Bobby Miller would be worse in all of these categories if we were just taking 2024. But compared to Stone and Knack and Kershaw, he's worse in every single category. Obviously, he's a young guy, small sample size. I get all of that. I'm not out on Justin Wrobleski, but I find that to be interesting just based on kind of the narrative that I feel like you and I heard when we threw this question out to our people. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw stacks up well in that category as well. So I'll be curious to see, because it seems like Landon Knack, despite having the best numbers, is not at the top of that pecking order. Obviously, Gavin Stone, Clayton Kershaw, both ahead of him. But I think the fact that Knack was used in a relief role, a bulk relief role a couple days ago, and then Wrobleski was saved to start, Bobby Miller potentially starting on Friday. I thought that was just an interesting kind of, I don't know if that's a tell as far as a pecking order the Dodgers have in their mind.
Yeah, it is a little strange. I mean, I think to answer your point, with Wrobleski, I think the easy thing that sticks out is, one, he's left-handed, and two, he throws very hard, right? Like,
Yep.
that's stuff that always grabs attention. And so I think that's and when you do throw harder, that certainly gives you a little more margin for error if you're going to be maybe missing some location from time to time. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think with Knack, definitely in my opinion, and I feel like a little bit the Dodgers, like, I don't want to project onto them, but he is somebody who could maybe help get them to the end of the season, but then come playoff time, he's not, like, he may not necessarily have a role.
Yeah.
Although, if they're insisting on Michael Grove being the multi-inning guy out of the bullpen, I know you and I agree, like, that's not necessarily, and a lot of people feel this way, that doesn't seem to be his strong suit. And so if he does struggle in that capacity, does that then open an opportunity for Landon Knack? Like, he has the experience, kind of a little bit of experience coming out of the bullpen. And if he can handle multiple innings, then, maybe that's how the door sort of opens for him in October.
Yeah, well, and that was going to be my next question to you is, okay, so let's hypothetically say the Dodgers don't need very many of these guys in the starting rotation. If Yamamoto comes back, if Kershaw pitches well, they've kind of got their 4 guys. So of Stone, Knack, Wrobleski, and Bobby Miller, is there a guy in that group that you think might be a fit in the Dodgers bullpen that, depending on who you ask, may or may not have a large need for some reinforcements in that group? Again, out of Stone, Knack, Wrobleski, and Miller, is there 1 or 2 guys in there that you would like to see the Dodgers experiment with in the bullpen over the next month and a half?
I think probably Wrobleski. I think Nat can provide the multi-inning role value that the
Yeah.
Dodgers seem to want in some capacity. But in terms of impact and potential, I think Wrobleski is probably the best option uh, to put into that bullpen role. And again, he's left-handed. He throws very hard. Like, that stuff, I've been
Yeah.
told by people who plug this stuff into computers that
Yeah.
that plays up in October. But in all seriousness, I just think his profile suits, like, kind of matches best with shifting into a bullpen role for a couple weeks or a month, whatever it could
Well,
end
if
up
we're
being.
talking about velocity playing up in the postseason, what about Bobby Miller?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's some walk issues there. I mean, if he can get those under control, then yeah, like, he definitely, it didn't go great for him last year, but he has quote unquote playoff experience. He's been there, if you will. And so that could be of value. And I'm sure we'll get some comments of saying, what good is one inning pitch basically, and fine. But yeah, he was with the Dodgers pretty much not all of last season, but had an extended run
Yeah.
last year, was in the rotation. Big things were expected this season, and whether injury, inconsistency, just for multiple reasons, it hasn't necessarily clicked. But yeah, if he could get his walks, under control, then he certainly is another option, I think, to put in there. And maybe him and Wrobleski, like depending on, as you said, what happens with some of the other options that the Dodgers have.
Yeah, I think you highlighted the key point with Bobby Miller. Is everyone looks at the velocity, but it's the walks that have been an issue. He's walking across AAA and majors this year, almost over 6 guys per 9 innings. At the major league level in 29 innings, he allowed 2.17 home runs per 9, which is an outrageous astronomical number. Which are like, if there's 3 things you're looking for in a bullpen arm, it's strike people out, don't walk them, and don't give up home runs. And Bobby Miller's pretty much been the exact opposite of that, even though he has the velocity. So I would like to see them kind of experiment with him in a reliever role just to see how he responds, because I could see that being the greatest likelihood of him offering them value this season. I would make the same case for Wrobleski as well. Lefty, 100-mile-an-hour fastball, a lot of pitches. You could see him being that multi-inning relief weapon as well that you've seen like Julio Urias perform back in 2020 for the Dodgers. So the Dodgers have some options when it comes to these young pitchers, Matt. It's just a matter of if any of them are going to step up. So again, check the news, check DodgerBlue.com. Make sure you subscribe to Dodger Blue 1958, because once news is released on who is actually starting tonight, what the plan is with Wrobleski and Miller, we will have that for you. That is Matt. I am Jeff. Be here as well for a live post-game show tonight. And depending on who pitches, it will be an interesting post-game show. So Anthony and I will be here as soon as that one ends. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. And as always, go Dodgers.